Welcome, everybody. My name is Robert Reeves. I'm with the Grndwater Grant Program. I'm the program manager. Welcome to our second round solicitation workshop. And I want to first introduce a few folks. Joe Karkoski, our Assistant Deputy Director. Megan Tosley, my direct supervisor. Tricia Carter behind me, as well as Aparjit Ranji. Tricia is going to be providing the presentation today. This is the second workshop. This is also being webcast. And we had our first workshop in Southern California a couple of weeks ago. This is our second one, so this is going to be the final one. Let's see here. Okay, so here you notice we have a website where people that are online can ask questions. And we also have our website here on this webpage where you can also ask us questions or look for additional information on our program if you think of some additional questions after today. Okay, so this first slide is, I'll go over our agenda today. So basically we'll be providing a little bit of background for Proposition 1 as well as our guidelines. And as you probably know, we did some amendments to our guidelines back in December. We're going to be touching on some of those today. And we'll also be going over, of course, the solicitation process, which is a little bit different from our first round. We've renamed a few things. We had a pre-application. We're renamed that concept proposal, and we'll be going over that primarily today. And also next steps. And in the handouts we have today, one of the things that we're going to be going over is the helpful hints, which is basically lessons learned from our first round. So just sort of a bookkeeping type thing. So when you see these question slides, please hold your questions until you see a slide like this. That helps us also take questions online since this is being webcast. Okay? Let's see. And one other thing, if you could silence your phones, that really would help us as well, if you haven't remembered to do that already. Okay, so Tricia?
So we were actually hoping that we could really quickly, since there's not that many people in the audience, have you guys just tell us your name and what organization you're here representing real quick.
I'm associate geologist with Provost and Pritchard in Clovis, California. So, what's that?
Hi, I'm Doug Young with Alameda County Water District in Fremont, California.
I'm Brian Whalen with Sierra West Consultants.
I'm Rob Schuman with Kleinfelder.
Michelle Gray Samuel, Capital Finance Manager for the Department of Utilities, City of Sacramento.
Elena Jordan, Admin Analyst for the City of Sacramento, Department of Utilities.
Eddie Teasdale with Ludolf and Scalmanini Consulting Engineers.
Janice Hanna, Del Oro Water Company.
Graham McNulty with Four Creeks.
Stuart Black, I'm the Cleanup Program Manager for Region 5.
Allison Tang with the Department of Water Resources.
Thank you.
So we have quite a few people that I think that are online. So anyway, we'll be answering those questions as well, and hopefully everybody can learn from those questions today. So anyway.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tricia Carter. I'm one of the grant managers in Robert's program. I'll be starting off with a little bit of background. As you know, Proposition 1 was allocated $800 million for the prevention and cleanup of contaminated groundwater, and that was done in November of 2014. And the proposition required establishment of guidelines, which were adopted in May of 2016. And then just recently, we amended the guidelines, and those were adopted by the board in December of last year. And the guidelines go through and outline the new round 2 solicitation process for applications. and that includes a concept proposal, a full proposal, and a technical review, and if favorable, a preliminary award of funding, and then development and execution of a grant agreement. As you know, grants will be administered through the Financial Assistance Application Submittal Tool, otherwise known as FAST. Just a quick update on where things stand. Typical planning projects that we have awarded in round one include planning projects for contamination, cleanup, or prevention, and that would include remedial investigations, feasibility studies, and preliminary design work for associated with some of the implementation projects that we have listed here. Typical implementation projects we have awarded include wellhead treatment to clean up an aquifer used as drinking water, well destruction so that we can eliminate the conduit that's allowing shallower contamination migrating to lower and deeper aquifers. Source area cleanup, which includes cleanup of volatile organic compounds, 1,4-dioxane, cleanup of nitrates as well to prevent migration to clean aquifers, and prevention projects such as the use of injection wells to prevent seawater intrusion. So all in all, we anticipate 23 grant agreements for a total of $125 million. We anticipate awarding about $17 million in planning funds, and that's out of the $80 million that's available. And we also anticipate awarding about $108 million in implementation funds, and that leaves about $544 million available for future rounds and future solicitations. So in terms of funding available, really the first bullet here in box here is the key to our program, that eligible projects, they could be planning or implementation, that will prevent and clean up contamination of groundwater that serves or is served as a source of drinking water. General obligation bonds must be for the construction or acquisition of capital assets unless specifically authorized by the bond. And after administrative bond costs, approximately $744 million were available to fund the projects. And like I mentioned previously, that is now down to $544 million. So at least $80 million has been set aside for remedial activities that prevent or reduce contamination of groundwater that serves as a source of drinking water. Now that $80 million will be reappropriated as part of Proposition 68 if the bond measure is approved by voters this summer. There's also a set aside, so $160 million has been set aside for projects benefiting disadvantaged communities or economically distressed areas. And of this $160 million, 80 is being set aside specifically for severely disadvantaged communities, and $10 million is being reserved for technical assistance. To date, we've awarded about $35 million for projects that qualify as a disadvantaged community, about $5 million for projects that qualify as a severely disadvantaged community, and about $3 million for technical assistance. So for planning for future funding cycles, because many of the projects funded in the first round were planning projects, we realized that many of the applicants will want to have funding available for implementation. So we plan on reserving $300 million for the 2020 solicitation, which we're considering and calling round 3. We're pushing this out to 2020 because many of the schedules for those planning projects are basically indicating that planning will last several years. Now, if the demand in round 2 outweighs this approach, we may need to adjust this number, or if anything changes regarding funding authority, we may need to reconsider this dollar amount. But for now, we are reserving the $300 million. So eligible grant applicants, those of you in the crowd, some of you could be public agencies, nonprofit organizations, public utilities, federally recognized Indian tribes, as well as California Native American tribes, and municipal water companies. Now, if you are not an eligible applicant, there is another program that is available. It's the SB 445 Site Cleanup Subaccount Program, and they are appropriated about $19.5 million on an annual basis. Eligible applicants for this program may differ from the Prop 1 Groundwater Grant Program. They're typically individuals or individual businesses. In terms of eligibility for those projects usually address handmade or human-made contamination. They address the threat to human health. The regulatory agency has usually already issued a directive of some sort, and the responsible party lacks financial resources to pay for the cleanup. So we'll take our first break for any questions, whether it be from the crowd, the group here, or from our groundwater inbox. Anything? Okay. All right, we'll move on. So the guidelines lay out priorities established by the Proposition 1 and eligibility requirements and preferences established by the State Board for implementation projects. And those are summarized in our guidelines. Priority and special consideration must be given to and will be given to projects that leverage private, federal, or local funding or projects that produce the greatest public benefit, incorporate new and innovative technology, and projects that address the urgent need of treatment, prevention of the spread of contamination, enhance local supply reliability, and optimize groundwater supplies in high-use basins. And those are all part of the Chapter 10 prioritization criteria. So across the top here, all projects must be consistent with the California Water Action Plan and achieve one or more of the following objectives, and those are listed on the second row. That is to prevent the spread of contamination, accelerate cleanup, protect aquifers, and provide clean drinking water. Across the bottom row, projects must be identified as a high priority project by applicable regulatory agencies. Applicants must demonstrate that funds are available for match requirements, and we'll talk about match a little bit more later in the presentation, and long-term operation and maintenance. The project must also have a useful life of 20 years. So preference will be given to implementation projects that meet one or more of the Proposition 1 prioritization criteria, and also support and advance the human right to water policy adopted by the State Board, benefit the largest number of people per dollar spent, so that's considering community size, remove the most contamination at the lowest cost, and can be completed within the appropriation timeframe. And we'll discuss the appropriation timeframe a little more later in the presentation. So preference will also be given to implementation projects that meet one or more of the Prop 1 prioritization criteria and also support attainment of the goals of and are identified in the approved groundwater sustainability plan or the applicable court decree in adjudicated basins. Demonstrate the applicant has the ability to complete projects of similar scope and nature on time and within budget that are identified in the applicable integrated regional water management plan and that are designed to achieve multiple benefits identified in the Prop 1 prioritization criteria. So Proposition 1 required that the State Board establish metrics of success, and for implementation projects, applicants must provide estimates for one or more of the following metrics. In general, what we saw from round one project isn't only going to necessarily achieve one metric. What we've seen is multiple metrics achieved through one type of project. So we expect to see the same in round 2. The slide highlights the proposed limits on grant amounts for eligible projects, and that's we're just focusing on the groundwater grant program here. I'll address drinking water treatment projects and septic to sewer projects later, but there's a $100,000 minimum grant amount and a $2 million maximum grant amount for planning projects. There's a $500,000 minimum grant amount and a $50 million maximum grant amount for implementation projects. These amounts could potentially be waived by the State Board, but for now these are the numbers we're looking at. The Prop 1 groundwater grant program eligibility, like I said, is largely focused on funding projects that will clean up or prevent contamination in the aquifer, but it additionally allows for up to $5 million for disadvantaged communities for drinking water treatment projects when the nature and extent of contamination is not conducive to cleanup or is pervasive. and up to $8 million for disadvantaged communities for septic to sewer projects that will prevent contamination in groundwater used as a source of drinking water. Just to note, these amounts are consistent with the maximum grant amounts for the state revolving fund programs, and Proposition 1 funding may be in addition to the funding received through the state revolving fund programs. In terms of match requirements, in general, Prop 1 requires a 50% local cost share, which we refer to as match, but can be reduced or waived for projects benefiting a disadvantaged community or economically distressed area. Thank you. And for those of you on webcast, I will advance one slide. Sorry about that. So let's back up. The table you see here, in general, our program requires a 50% match. And there's 3 groups, as you can see in this table, with respect to the reduction of match. So there's a potential to reduce match based on what type of community you are. And match is calculated based on the total project cost and not the grant amount. In terms of match requirements, we recognize that sometimes the applicant and its jurisdiction may not be a disadvantaged community. However, the project may benefit a down gradient disadvantaged community. So that is an opportunity where we would potentially consider reduced match. There's also something new to our amended guidelines. We have a groundwater cleanup program concept in that you can submit a project that includes and involves multiple projects. Again, if reduced match is being considered, we would look at projects, project specific, project by project, if they were all submitted as one program concept proposal. Match reductions can also apply to individual components. And Appendix B, if you look at the Appendix B in our guidelines, requests for reduced match and examples are provided for you. When it comes to responsible parties, Proposition 1 funds can be used where the identified responsible parties are unwilling or unable to pay for the total cost of cleanup. Prop 1 requires applicants to make a reasonable effort to recover costs associated with remediation from the responsible parties. We recognize that it'll continue to be the regulatory agency's primary responsibility to identify responsible parties and try to attempt to achieve cost recovery. The project scope can also include responsible party searches, and the funding guidelines allow grant or matching funds used for responsible party searches. Okay, we'll take another break if there's any questions from the group or anything from our inbox. Yes.
So when it comes to the
For those of you on the webcast, we're just trying to find a microphone that will project for the group.
Hello. Hey. Okay. So when it comes to a project, you're planning for a planning grant that will eventually lead to implementation. Can you essentially start both applications like at the same time, or is it something that you have to wait until the project or the planning phase is completed and then start the implementation? Because I think they're considered 2 different things, right?
Correct, and I can go first. I believe some things can have some overlap. I would say that if it was an implementation project that you anticipate, we want to make sure any type of data gaps or information that still needs to be gathered that would inform the implementation project would be submitted at a later time. But for keeping the schedule in mind and appropriation timeframes, you could probably be preparing your implementation concept proposal while you're executing your planning project. Anything else?
I mean, in general, I think you probably wouldn't want to be applying for the same project for both planning and implementation in the same round. Just because, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the key information you would want to have before pursuing an application for implementation.
And I guess the second part to that question is, as far as matching, if it's a severely disadvantaged community, what kind of, I guess, strong evidence you would need to essentially get even a lesser reduction? Because I know there was like a little bit of a, not disclaimer, but essentially a little caption that said that it couldn't be even reduced even under the 5% match requirement for a severely disadvantaged community.
Right. I mean, I think we would look at everything on a case-by-case basis, but in general, for a severely disadvantaged community, that would be, you need to be below 60% of the statewide median household income. We would work with the applicant to determine what that benefit area is or that community. So, you know, it could be the applicant itself in the water system in itself, or it could be a down gradient disadvantaged community. So we would work with you to do that calculation, and we've done it different ways.
Thank you.
Anything? Okay. Good. Okay, we'll continue to move on. All right, so the solicitation process and how to apply. So the first box in the top left, you know, after the applicant identifies that it has a funding interest, it'll go to, that applicant would go to our website, review the guidelines and helpful hints, and at this point in time, they would decide what type of project they have under the Groundwater Grant Program. Or as you can see across the second row, you could determine if you're a cleanup or prevention project. In that case, you would focus your application on the Groundwater Grant Program, request for proposal. You might be a drinking water treatment project. In other words, you would apply to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, or you might be a septic to sewer project. And in that case, you would apply for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. So the top right square, you could see that applicants would then proceed to FAST, and they would select the appropriate request for proposal and either apply to the Groundwater Grant Program, Drinking Water SRF, or Clean Water SRF program. Just to note, the Drinking Water and Clean Water SRF programs have a continuous application process, so that's a little different than what we do. We solicit in terms of rounds. The State Revolving Fund staff will also coordinate with our program, the Groundwater Grant Program, regarding joint funding opportunities for drinking water treatment or septic to sewer projects. Just advance here. So here's an overview of the project selection process. Across the first row from left to right, the applicant would complete a concept proposal in FAST, and the applicant would submit that concept proposal for review. At that point in time, the action on the applicant's part would stop. And across the second row from right to left, the staff would review the concept proposal and will contact the applicant and other regulatory agencies. Once the concept proposal is deemed complete and regulatory agencies and DFA staff agree with the scope of the project, the applicants will be invited to submit a full proposal. One thing to note here, we request that the applicants do not start the full proposal or upload any information pertaining to the full proposal until you've received an invitation from DFA. Then across the third row from left to right, the full proposal will include a detailed scope, schedule, and budget, and this will be reviewed by a technical team based on scoring evaluation criteria and our guidelines. And then based on the results of the scoring evaluation, the deputy director will decide whether or not to offer a conditional preliminary award for funding of the project. And once the grant agreement is signed and executed, the project can be implemented. So questions should first be answered in our financial assistance application submittal tool questionnaire for the Groundwater Grant Program request for proposal. And there'll be two attachments attachment templates are available. One is for planning and one is for implementation. The attachment template should be answered with the information such as data, figures, and reports, and et cetera. We'll go over that type of information later. And that's, whatever information is readily available to the applicant. Another attachment template is for the budget, and that is also provided as a handout today. And attachments and instructions are available on our Proposition 1 website. So the following information is part of what you'll see on the FAST questionnaire and is required for submittal. These are basically the main headings that you'll see in FAST, and those are reflected here. After completing the questionnaire, you will complete 1 or 2 concept proposal templates, or one of the 2 concept proposal templates, either planning or implementation, and I'll describe those in the next slides. So just in general, we wanted to point out a few things of what we learned from round 1 and what we'd like applicants to consider carefully whether their project is ready for implementation. So if an applicant is not able to fully complete the implementation concept proposal for the proposed project, DFA staff recommends completing a planning concept proposal. So to be ready for implementation, eligibility must be clearly demonstrated, and the implementation intent, scope, and budget should be developed at least at a conceptual level. A full design is not required. So as you'll see here for the concept proposal, planning grant applicants must include the attachment that's no more than 3 pages long, and it consists of 4 sections. I know that sounds very brief, but we're trying to streamline this process and to keep the information as brief as possible, but to give us enough to understand that you're eligible, ready to move forward with planning or implementation. Applicants for planning grants are not expected to collect additional data or produce documentation that was not already collected as part of a previous phase of the project or is not readily available. So again, we're not expecting you to gather more information, but just provide what you've collected to date. Also, the following information will be requested as part of the concept proposal, so pretty straightforward. There's a background summary that we're expecting, your project objectives, the grant amount, and any match requirements. Again, the following information will be requested as part of the scope of work for the planning concept proposal. DFA will be looking for consistency between the work tasks and the schedule and the budget. So this highlights what we'll be requesting in the scope of work. And then the following information will be requested as part of the figures and supporting data in the concept proposal. For figures, we're looking for regional or project site location maps, groundwater elevation and groundwater and our soil contours, concentration contours. As for data, we'll ask for data for monitoring wells, monitoring well frequencies, well construction details and diagrams, water quality data in the groundwater, and that could be for monitoring or production wells, and time series data for any impacted wells in the project area. So it brings us to the question slide again. We'll do this prior to talking about the implementation concept proposal. Any questions? Nothing? Okay. All right, we'll keep moving forward and talk about the concept proposal for implementation. So again, implementation grant applicants must include a concept proposal attachment that's no more than 5 pages long. Again, we have the same, we'll have same 4 main sections. The concept proposal attachment should be answered with information like we described in the planning concept proposal that would be satisfied by providing data, figures, and reports that's readily available to the applicant. Now, if there's a significant data gap that exists in the project area, applicants should consider applying for a planning grant to further develop their project. Just like in planning, for implementation, the following information will be requested as part of the implementation concept proposal. So same information here. And then for the scope of work, just like we said, for planning, very similar. Again, we're looking for consistency between work tasks, schedule, and budget. I wanted to take the time to point out the schedule bullet. And as you'll see from you have a helpful handout. and part of that highlights the project timeline. So I just want to focus on that a little bit. The Proposition 1 Groundwater Grant Program guidelines indicate that funds are available for expenditure until June 30 of 2021. Now, if the state budget is approved as proposed, the Prop 1 funding for appropriation will be extended by 2 years. So that's for 2023. So if the appropriation is extended, applicants should assume that round 2 projects must be completed by March 2023. So that's something for you to keep in mind when you're developing your projects and planning your schedule. What we mean by completed is any type of post-construction monitoring or final reporting would be completed by that date of March 2023. So again, for figures and supporting data, the following information will also be requested for implementation concept proposals, very similar to what you saw for planning projects. However, we anticipate at this point in time that a more robust data set would be submitted to us. We really are what we're looking for here is to really, for the applicant to demonstrate the intent of the project and what will be achieved through implementation. So clear picture needs to be painted in terms of the data provided and presented. For the budget summary, you also have a handout for that template. This is a standard budget summary table. It includes 5 categories or main tasks. That's required for submittal as part of the concept proposal for both planning and implementation projects. The tasks used in the budget must match the tasks like we requested in the scope of work and schedule sections of the concept proposal attachment. Again, in your helpful hints handout, there is a section on cost eligibility. I just wanted to highlight that as well. Eligible costs incurred after November 4th, 2014 may be claimed as match. Reimbursement of eligible costs will not occur until after agreement execution. And the grant agreement will indicate the eligible start date after which eligible reimbursable costs may be incurred. And for the purposes of the concept proposal, applicants can assume an eligible start date of December of 2018. Keep in mind that both that indirect costs, overhead, contingency, as well as operation and maintenance costs are not considered eligible costs. And ineligible costs, if you wanted more of a summary of that, are available in Section 10 of our guidelines. Lastly, we just wanted to point out that other state grants cannot be used as match. Okay, one more opportunity for questions. Yes?
If you could just please repeat the time frame that you stated that eligible match could be used. There was a time frame you stated, I believe.
So that dates back to November of 2014. Right. Nothing? Okay. We'll keep moving on. So some helpful hints. Again, you have the handout that we provided. It covers the following topics. I'll just stick to the general information here. We ask that you review the guidelines and review the grant agreement templates posted on the Proposition 1 website. So it's not the template for the concept proposal, but it's the actual grant agreement template that we'd like you to have a look at prior to applying. If applicants are not able to abide by the terms and conditions contained therein, applicants should not be submitting a proposal. And we just request that you sign up for email notifications for our Groundwater Grant Program inbox and email notifications. Some other tips here, basically before you submit, let's start talking. Let's start the dialogue. We ask that you call us, email us. We're here to answer your questions during your concept proposal development. We would advise that you get in touch with your local regulatory staff while you're developing the project. That's to ensure there's no surprises and to be able to address expectations of all parties. We will coordinate with the following state agencies to ensure the project is considered a high priority. So that would include the Regional Board, Division of Drinking Water, Department of Toxic Substances Control, and U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Some other tips we'd like to share, and it's part of our learning lessons that we had in round one. We'd like to demonstrate how the proposed project aligns with other metrics of success, program priorities, and requirements and preferences. We're looking for the applicant to provide detailed and consistent scope, schedule, and budget. We ask that the applicant identify any tasks that have already been completed to date versus those tasks that will be completed as part of the project. We ask the applicant clearly describe the role of other agencies involved. They may be already a part of the implementation or the operation and maintenance of a system, so we'd like to understand how they're involved and what they're currently doing. And we'd also like to ensure the grant and match cost only contains groundwater grant program eligible costs. Another main tip is that we just request that applicants do not submit anything in terms of the full proposal or upload any information until you've received an invitation letter from DFA. So for next steps, we opened solicitation for round 2 already, and the deadline for submittal of the concept proposal will be in June or July of this year. And notices will be sent out on the email list, so please sign up. Applicants with eligible projects will be invited by letter to submit a full proposal to the Groundwater Grant Program in the summer of this year. And applicants will have 6 weeks to provide their full proposal. Continuing in the table, we have also provided some dates for the technical review, the preliminary awards, and the grant agreement execution. The next slide just shows different ways to communicate, to obtain information, to reach out to us. We have our website listed here. To get email alerts, we have the where to sign up. And also we have a groundwater grant program inbox that you can email us at any time with your questions. Just to note, we'll post this presentation on our website as well as any of the questions and answers that we discussed today. All right, and last chance for questions. Okay, hearing nothing from the inbox or the group that joined us today, thank you for attending. All of us will remain here a little bit longer if you have a specific project you'd like to discuss or any other questions you may have. Thank you.